AT1 bonds. AT1 bonds. Why are we studying the AT1 bonds? Because it was recently in news. Now, AT1 bonds are additional tier 1 bonds that were introduced as a part of Bassel III norms. As a part of Bassel III norms. After the GFC global financial crisis of 2008. Yes, basically the priority is to raise funds from the shareholders, but if you're not able to raise the funds from the shareholders and maintain your capital requirement, you'll have to issue tier 1 bonds, additional tier 1 bonds, and additional tier 1 bonds were introduced as a part of Bassel III norms. Now you have to remember that जो ये Bassel III norms आए हैं, what are these Bassel III norms? This is the topic that we'll be covering after this particular topic. AT1 bonds के बाद we will start the Bassel III norms. So these are some international standards as of yet. बस आप इतना याद रखो. These are some international standards given by the Bank of International Settlement. वो बोलता है कि कितना capital required होना चाहिए. Now, according to the Bassel III norms, they have said that this much amount of capital needs to be maintained by each and every bank of the world. Then RBI has its own standards, and RBI has implemented the Bassel III, और उसी के हिसाब से RBI ने अपना भी 11.5% का capital requirement बोला है. फाइन. सो वो तो हम बाद में देखेंगे क्या आरबीआई ने कहा, क्या बेसल ने कहा. फिलहाल के लिए it was introduced as a part of Bassel III norms after the GFC global financial crisis of 2008. Why was it introduced? AT1 bonds to strengthen banks capital, to strengthen banks capital in the face of risks, in the face of risks and uncertainties. In the face of risks and uncertainties. Okay? In the face of risks and uncertainties. So these are your reasons for AT1 bonds. Now AT1 bonds के features क्या है? Feature देख लेते हैं. पहला point. First point is these bonds, AT1 bonds, these are the bonds, but these bonds are unsecured. They are unsecured bonds. Now we know that, for example, government hai, and government is issuing a bond. We call these bonds as risk-free. These are risk-free bonds. Why? Because the government is at its back. And when the government is at its back, they are secured bonds. They are secured bonds. But if there's a bond that is not issued by the government, but it is issued by a private company, then that private company, it is not a secured bond, it is an unsecured bond, because say for example the company went bankrupt, so the bond is actually worth nothing. So it is an unsecured bond. Likewise, if the bank is issuing an AT1 bond, and bank is telling the people that I need 20 crore rupees and I am issuing this bond, just give me the 20 crore rupees and I'll pay you an interest, a higher rate of interest. So but this bond would be unsecured, it will not be secured. Fine. So we have to remember this, that AT1 bonds are unsecured bonds. They are not secured. So they have a high financial risk. Now, these are unsecured, number one. Second thing you have to remember is, if these are unsecured, why would people invest in it? Because they provide high interest. So they are high interest bearing bonds. High interest bearing bonds. तो इस पे उनको बॉन्ड्स में काफी ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट भी मिलता है. सो हाई इंटरेस्ट बेयरिंग बॉन्ड्स. एंड यू हैव टू रिमेंबर that they actually are also considered as subordinate bonds. Subordinate bonds, or we call them junior bonds. These are junior bonds. Junior bond का मतलब हो गया, इनका financial risk is more. The protection they enjoy is actually less than the regular debt. Fine, regular debt, जैसे किसी को कर्जा दे दिया आपने, one person is giving crediting money into another person's account, and when you give the credit, you take some collateral, right? यहाँ पर the public is giving money to the bank, and there is no collateral taken from the bank. So that makes it unsecured, and that makes it subordinate. Why subordinate? Because because the protection they enjoy, because the protection they enjoy is less than regular debt, is less than regular debt. Okay, so this is your another feature. So they are unsecured, they are high interest bearing bonds, and they are subordinate or junior bonds. Then next point, they are perpetual bonds. They are also perpetual. They are perpetual. What do we mean by perpetual? That there is no date of maturity. The in bonds का कोई date of maturity नहीं होता. No date of maturity. No date of maturity. Suppose this is Axis Bank. Axis Bank needs money. Axis Bank has issued an AT1 bond, and this AT1 bond is a bond which is providing maybe an interest rate of 15%. So every year you'll be getting 15%. But ये AT1 bond कब तक है, कितने साल तक है, इसकी maturity कब है? There is nothing like that. It is a perpetual bond. There is no date of maturity. There is no date of maturity. Now you might ask, sir, अगर date of maturity नहीं है तो bond reality में कब तक होगा? So in reality, the bond has a call option. The bond has a call option. तो bond का एक call option है. That is, जिसने इसको issue किया है, in this case the Axis Bank can call back the bond anytime it wants. जब भी Axis Bank चाहेगा कि bond मुझे वापस चाहिए, Axis Bank can call it. Fine. So it has a call option. That is, the issuer can buy back on call. The issuer can buy back on call. Call यानी demand. On call या demand. So जब issuer, whenever the Axis Bank wants that I just want these bonds to end, so it has a option of buyback. It can buy back. It has a call option. Very nice. उसके बाद it is a perpetual bond. इसकी कोई date of maturity नहीं है, but it has a call option. Issuer जो है, जिसने इसको issue किया है, it can buy back the bond whenever it wants. And finally, it is a non-convertible bond. It is a non-convertible bond. You cannot convert this bond into shares and then sell the shares, like we have already seen SDR and S4A. So in that sense, you had the bond and you had the loan. You made a security and turned those securities into shares and then sold the shares. ऐसा कुछ भी यहाँ पर possible नहीं है. These are non-convertible bonds. So these are your AT1 bonds. Okay, they have no expiry date. Now if you in reality, if you see that when you have a high interest, and this high interest bearing bonds, since AT1 bonds are actually bonds, so in all practical purposes these are bonds, but there is no expiry date, there is no date of maturity. This particular feature is actually not the feature of bonds. This is not the feature of bonds. Why? Because perpetuality or no date, having no date of maturity, is actually the feature of equity. Is actually the feature of equity. It is not the feature of bonds. Now, since these are bonds having a feature of equity as well, since these are bonds but they are having the feature of equity, therefore these bonds have both the feature of bonds as well as equity, and therefore they are considered as quasi-equity instruments. They are considered as quasi-equity instruments. Quasi-equity instruments.